Welcome everyone to the Sunday Roast. We've got the Food Fighters, original name.
No.
How'd you come up with that name? I've got to ask, because like normally you're just on as yourselves, but as you got the Food Fighters name, I'm a big Foo Fighter fan.
Me too. I've seen
So
them. I've seen them live a few times.
same.
Well, we were just looking for something that
Well, something that
got
wasn't
people
taken.
engaged in thinking about farming and food, and because people think farming is just a hobby and they don't accept that, or they don't recognize that the two things are linked. So I came up with it. I think I don't. In fact, I don't know. We did a brainstorming.
No,
Did
I
I
think it was this. There was a whole. So many people have made food-related podcasts. It's
Yeah.
just a saturated market, you know. But so we sort of found that, and I don't think it had been taken, or if they had, it was defunct, and we settled on it. And I think it's an okay name, to be honest. I wouldn't moan about it.
Yeah, I like that. The fact that I get to say we've got the Food Fighters on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Nick Webb.
It's memorable. It's memorable.
Big question for today. Can Britain afford a Trump conflict or a US conflict? Another US conflict?
Well, look, Al, like this is the sort of question that really should have been in number 10 before Starmer gave permission for our air bases to be used here, even though he says he didn't. You know, when the war was first mooted, that there should have been a proper decision-making process. But of course, we can't afford it. We're already, when you look at Europe as a whole, we left it. So it's like Europe's in a house, and we decided to live out of the house next door to it in a tent. And every single time there's a shock, we are in that tent being battered to death. So of course we couldn't afford it. And then we got into a space where we're so weak that we have to give in to Donald Trump. And that's also been exacerbated by Starmer appeasing this whole Trump thing by excusing Mandelson into government and having him as ambassador, because it was sort of like, well, Trump's coming, so it doesn't matter. Everything's going to be great. We can all, you know, we can all dine off Trump's table and do well out of it. Tony Blair can get his, get his businesses going with digital ID, and we can all have a super time at the expense of our citizens. And that's what it's looking like to me. So no, we can't afford it. It's going to be horrendous. It's not only going to be unaffordable, it's going to stretch us resources extraordinarily, because farmers are already really struggling to afford to produce food. And there's going to be world shortages of food. I mean, this did happen in the after the Libya crisis and the Crimean War, that world food stocks plummeted, and there was starvation in Central Africa. And so it's going to be, I think it's going to be 20 times worse than. I mean, I think it's hard to quantify because we don't know how long it's going to go on, and it's looking as though the Strait of Hormuz is really, Iran have realized that they can weaponize that. I mean, it's like throwing a boomerang and not knowing where it's going to land, and now it's coming back with, God, a nuclear bomb, which is going to affect everybody.
Because of the Strait of Hormuz, is that how you pronounce it?
Hormuz, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Has been shut. That's jacked up oil prices. When is the worst time of the year in farming for oil prices to go up? Is it about now? So, like, if you had it over the winter, you might, because you're not sowing crops, you're not having to worry about oil and petrol prices as much as you would be when you're beginning the sowing season. Have I got that wrong?
Well, depends what you're doing. I mean, cultivation and harvesting are very intensive. But I mean, if you're running a dairy, say you're sort of running tractors all year, it depends. And people obviously will try and buy diesel when it's cheap, this or the other. Like it's just a business decision. So it's not. I wouldn't say there is an ideal time for fuel prices to skyrocket. To be honest.
And also, it's about fertilizer.
Yeah. Well, that was something you were touching on in the last episode, actually, because you had mentioned there was a company, because you and I had been talking about making this super soil a couple of years ago, and I think we've missed the boat maybe. because someone apparently has set that up in the UK. Are you aware of this super soil? I think you and I got in a Barney about it a few years ago, Ollie.
Who's I haven't seen this. Who set it up?
Do you know what the super soil is, though?
The Terra Preta. Is that correct?
Yeah.
No, I remember it. So it's this the concept is that you have soil that's been constructed over a very long period of time through a traditional form of agriculture in South America that involves burning forest, right? So it's got lots of charcoal in it, essentially.
It's got charcoal, but it's got pottery, it's got bones, and then it seems to have a special type of fungus. So they think that they've whatever this fungus was originally in, they take that soil and then put it into this new area, and it's like highly sought after soil in the Amazon by farmers because it regenerates. So instead of the soil being depleted, because you've got the idea is bacteria and fungi able to hide in the pottery or the bones or the charcoal, it's able to some level regenerate that soil back to full healthiness.
Yeah, but it's just kind of fundamentally against the laws of physics, isn't it? Because you can't create something from nothing, which is sort of the claim here.
But then
no, but
you get like
that is what's happening, because you can't. Let's say you have a soil that's healthy, you deplete it by growing stuff out of it and taking that stuff away to consume it. Like that soil can't then just regenerate on its own, because then you take more stuff out and it repeats, and then you're just producing food from nothing, right? I mean, it's the sort of thing that if it could be done, people would do it. Do you know what I mean?
But it is,
and it's also to do with scale. That you need to be able to produce an awful lot of fertilizer, and we found an amazing system to do it. But you need gas because it's a byproduct of gas.
But isn't it also regeneration of nitrates into the soil? Like you put legumes into the soil, and it can replenish it by reintroducing.
Yeah, but that's crop rotation.
Yeah,
that's just a different thing. Yeah,
because
you can't do that. The fundamental task of agriculture is to not run down your soil, and there are lots of different ways that you can do that.
There are different ways of doing it. I'm aware of.
Yeah, we're going into a heavy farming conversation, and look. The reason that the Hormuz Strait is a major problem for food is chemical fertilizer, which the human food population for the world is absolutely reliant on. I cannot underestimate that. If we can't get fertilizer, then food stocks will absolutely more than halve across the world. And think about that. That's a major problem. But we are in a weaker position here in Brexit Britain because we closed our 2 fertilizer plants, or Boris Johnson didn't help them stay open by giving them a loan for 10 million. And so we're reliant on imports. And we're also more reliant on food imports, which are coming from further away. So Morocco is one country, which is a poor country, which is going to be more impacted by global food shortages. So the whole compounding of these issues is enormous. Whereas if you are within a giant single market, which happens to be just on our doorstep, you would be shielded. And that is the decision that we made. And from the moment we made it, the worst things have happened. COVID, Ukraine war, now Iran. And the other awful thing is that before Brexit happened, we were already light on resilience for lots of, not because of the EU making that happen, because of decisions that have been made by successive governments since the 1960s, really, is when I've got it back to. So we have made ourselves weaker, and then we made things more workable by getting into the single market. It actually made things more comfortable, and then deciding to come out of it means that we are totally and utterly unprepared for what is coming.
You feel the same, Ollie?
Yeah, I think so. We should definitely have domestic fertilizer production, which is touched on. It's just one of the key industries that we need, and it's kind of dumb to offshore stuff like that. I think, if we're producing stuff, we might as well produce it here. You know what I mean? For consuming stuff. So I hope I said that correctly. So yeah, I just agree. I don't really have much to add. We should be producing as much food as we can. We've learnt the hard way more than once that this is something that becomes very, very risky if things that we can't control go wrong. And it does look like we're just going to repeat that, unfortunately.
Where do we get our fertilizer from then? If we're not getting it from the UK, where's it brought in from now?
Well, a lot of it's coming from America.
Oh, really? So actually, we're beholden to them. If anything goes wrong, they can just.
Well, and Ukraine, I think. I think we get quite a lot of it from Ukraine as well.
Yeah, but after the Ukraine war, we started bringing more in from America, I think.
Yeah, because obviously, I don't actually know if fertilizer production is that similar to munition production in the present day, but there's this idea that you get in farming in this sort of nature friendly farming camp that fertilizer production is the same as the military industrial complex, because after the First World War all of the munitions factories just kept going and made nitrates, not for bombs but for a war on nature kind of stuff. And maybe they switched the factories in Ukraine over to munitions. I don't know, but it is a similar process.
Wow. Okay. So we are, and where do we get most of our food from? Is it Europe or is it America, or is it sort of split these days?
We get ourselves and Europe combined make about 90% of our food. Yeah, and then America's, I don't know if Liz knows the figure for that, but it's less than what's left. We don't get very much from America at the moment, really.
No, we don't get much from America at the moment. We're getting an awful lot of our fresh fruits and vegetables from Turkey and Morocco since Brexit, more so.
So we had to go further afield to get.
And so, for instance, with chicken, before Brexit happened, we were 96% self-sufficient in poultry. And since Brexit, that's gone down to 60% because more cheaper poultry is coming in from Turkey, which has got mass intensification. And also from Brazil. Huge numbers of chicken is coming in from Brazil.
Was there no issue with aviation flu, though, within the UK, or was that mainly other parts of the world that were affected?
Everyone's been impacted by bird flu, but the drop is to do with
imports,
Brexit and labour shortages, energy, because intensive poultry farming is very energy intensive. So the energy crisis, we left the internal energy market, which made us more volatile prices, and the shocks means we're more exposed. But then also you've got cheaper imports coming in, and we had the same with pork. If people are stretched and there's a piece of pork on the shelf from Holland or from the Netherlands, which is lower standards, more intensified, next to a free range piece of British pork, then someone on a tight budget is going to choose the cheaper one. And so the processors will continue to feed whatever the people want. And people might want the more expensive one, but they can't afford it. And so the same would happen with chicken and everything else.
Which then undercuts farmers, and then you make less of the British chickens because it's not as viable.
Yeah, I mean, we know one of the countries, a real big player in the chicken market, and he's come out of it now just because the standards are so stressed now, and it's a race to the bottom. And he just sort of said, he's our age, and he's just like, actually, I'm out of here because this is getting so cutthroat that it's too much stress. So, and the same with the country's raspberry grower, the largest raspberry grower, it's exactly the same problems because it's, you put up, it's labor intensive as well. You put up national insurance on top of everything else, and your margins are tiny. So to make money, you've got to produce food at scale.
Yeah.
And so all of that then means you're just doing massive gambling. You might as well just go out and gamble on the horses in Cheltenham Gold Cup. So, because the odds against it are so huge when your margins are so small.
Liz said something last week, Ollie, that caught my ear and eye, which was, I think you said, Liz, there were 7 farms around you, and now you're the only one left. Is that correct?
We're the only one left producing food. Yeah.
Is that the same with you, Ollie?
Not really. Where I live, the farms are very small, so we're about 120 acres, which is probably about representative. There are a few people that are bigger and a few people that are smaller, but the people that are bigger tend to be sort of several farms literally clumped together through rent or whatever. But because they're small farmers, what tends to happen if you get a rough patch is that they just become poor and keep going. A lot of them won't really have very much labour employed, so they're in many ways actually quite resilient. Obviously, I don't think that's necessarily fantastic because it means that the farmers are suffering, but they are able to do that and continue. No, we haven't really got any of the silliness going on around here. It's mostly stuff, but there are less farmers here than there were a long time ago. I mean, I live in a village that's got 2 farms in it still, actually within the nucleus of the village, and each one probably has kind of a part-time job for one person, whereas 50 years ago there were 15 farms actually within the village, and they've all been surrendered and developed and this like the other. So they've all gone.
Also, Ollie, you were dairy, and you stopped. Say why you stopped being a dairy farm.
Of course, yeah. Well, we were. It's because it's a small farm. You have to do something fairly intensive in order to sort of have a business, as it were. And we were milking cows. We milked about 100, and we employed European labour because it's quite difficult to get British labour, even though it was very good wage and I think quite interesting, varied work. So they went home after Brexit, which was difficult, and then we lost the European subsidy, of course, which made it even more difficult.
But Ollie, Nigel Farage and Michael Gove and Boris Johnson all said you were going to keep the subsidy forever.
Yeah, well, we didn't, and the purpose of all of the nature-friendly stuff that people like to talk about, I think, was just to offer a smokescreen to allow these subsidies to be removed, because it's socialism. These subsidies it's a food subsidy that helps workers on the land to produce cheap food for workers in the city, and it costs the government money, and the government don't want to spend that money. The Tories don't want to do it, but they don't want to attack farmers because they perceive that farmers are their sort of demographic. Labour don't want to attack the sort of urban working class, of course, but they are more prepared to attack farmers, and they've kind of done like a double team in that the Tories have said, well, we'll still support farmers. You can have these payments for nature things, public goods for public money, all that sort of stuff. And then Labour have come in and gone, why the hell are we paying for this? It's ridiculous, and just got rid of it. So we've been double teamed by both major political parties, and I don't think either of them have our interests at heart.
No, I don't get that impression either. I keep pushing back on people that moan to me about farmers and farming, and I'm just like, do you want a corporation or family-run farm? And I always go family-run farm. I trust you guys more than I do with corporations. Even for us, go on.
Yeah, you're right. Well, it's worker ownership of the means of production, right? I mean, it's this strange thing where people on the left, which I use in inverted commas in a very broad sense, often perceive farmers as like an asset-owning class, and therefore they're part of the elites. But we own the capital that we work to earn a living, which to me is essentially the meaning of socialism. Well, I don't think it is that. I mean, to me, it is. The perception is quite it's like an emotive desire, I think, that you get on the left, which is that we've lost the railways, we've lost the mines, we've lost other nationalised industry, right? We've really suffered as Thatcherism has stripped the country down, and we still have the socialised model of farming just about still in this country. And they look at that and they think, well, how come these people still have this? I want to take it off them. They can strip their assets off them, which I kind of get on an emotional level, but it's rounding down rather than up, right? What would happen in that case, as is happening with the inheritance tax, is that workers who own the assets that they work, the capital that they work for their businesses, are going to have to sell up, and they will go to the people that can afford them, who are aristocrats, who are corporations, who are maybe these big charities that get money from biodiversity net gain, and in my view, just operate as corporations. And the assets will go upwards rather than down, you see. And I think it would be much more noble and more authentically left-wing to try and raise everybody up. I think that's a better attitude.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in that the invention of the corporation has been a very, very clever, sneaky system, because these corporations, if you look at News Corp, for instance, it sounds great. We know who owns it, the Murdoch family, but they really are able to do. They really are lords, aren't they? Lords of the manor, as in the old world. And then they are completely untouchable. They can get away with paying minimal tax. They're able to live in different the people themselves that own that corporation are shielded by shareholders, and they're also shielded from the national government's reach for taxation. And as they've got bigger and bigger, of course, they're going to get bigger. And we've seen it with Elon Musk. I mean, his wealth has doubled in recent times, thanks to his buddy, Donald Trump.
And COVID.
And so and we saw it in Russia with Putin, how money is filtered up into a few hands, money and power, and that there is no concern for anyone that isn't within the upper echelons of that oligarchy. And Europe shielded us, or it did offer some protection from this feasting of what is going on. And so when people see farms and sort of make out, we in the olden days, back in the feudal system, yes, there was this thing when the local lord could decide the prices of food and how long you worked and blah, 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 blah. But everybody knew who that local lord was. Now, the world is controlled by global corporations. I think in the clothing industry alone, there's only 5 corporations that really run all of the clothes that we wear. And food-wise, there's some very big corporations: Cargill, JBS Meats, BlackRock. And so the bigger and bigger that they get, then the less control that we have. But at some stage, it's bound to collapse, because they can't go on doing this. I just don't see it. It probably happens at a mass scale with Facebook and social media and tech, because the tech can manage itself. But in terms of commodities, I think it's very complicated, and that is exactly happening, in fact, with beef production, because they've intensified it to such an extent. You can't intensify reproduction and birth of livestock, particularly big animals like cattle. So when you've got the market pushing the fattening of animals, so they buy them as cars and they fatten them and then they sell them, that is where the money is, the sharp money. And then you've got less people actually doing the carving, because that's the labor intensive, difficult thing. And so less and less of people are doing that. And then suddenly you've got a system that doesn't have the bottom feeding the two layers.
It made me wonder why there was big announcements saying that a load of countries had come together to release a huge amount of oil. Probably because they've realized that most populations around the world are at stretching point, at breaking point. Like, I don't think we're that far off. I think I did a calculation a couple of years ago saying I think we're only 100 to 200 calories different. The poorest are different to the people who were the poorest in the French Revolution in terms of calorie intake, which is insane. And that's Europe. That's the UK poorest. Obviously, it's a smaller percentage than what I'd expect in France, but you can look at the diets of people at the same time and figure out the calorie intake, and it's shocking. So I wonder if they suddenly, came together and realized we're close to breaking point with a lot of the population who are really pissed off. That's why I think you've got such a split in the population. They're at each other's throats a lot of the time, because people don't have money. People could barely afford food. I think in the UK, a third of people have no savings, nothing. They live paycheck to paycheck. 1/3. That is not a safe environment to have a country operating. That's how you end up having revolutions. Like, that is the most basic thing you can have. And the worst thing is that you're seeing all these other people with these flashy cars and millions in their bank account, and I'm all right, Jack, fuck all of you, is basically the message that they're giving. Farage this week brought up that chlorinated chicken would be, all right to have on the shelves. He's really burning that foot and mouth disease he caught. He's never getting rid of that, is he? So he's backing chlorinated chicken, and he's backing Trump for war. Oh no, wait, that changed, didn't it? Did it change? Yes. I can't keep track. Does he support the war with Trump?
He's definitely on record for supporting the war, and he said, I don't always back all wars, but I support this one. And it's actually Jenrick who was trying to rein it in a bit, because Jenrick was working out, as in, oh my God, actually this war is going to be held responsible very quickly for a really awful cost of living crisis, at least. And so they're doing the usual thing, the double messaging.
I think that the gloves need to come off. We need to accept that we're part of this with the Americans, with the Israelis. We have to get rid of this regime. We have to do everything we can to try to ensure that what comes afterwards is better. Does it come with risks? Yes, it does, and I fully understand that, but I repeat the point that to do nothing probably carries graver risks.
We cannot get involved directly in another foreign war. We don't have a navy. We can't even defend our own military base in Cyprus.
So, and the problem that we've got is that those of us that can keep receipts and see things and think critically understand this. The problem that we fail to understand is the people that are attracted to Farage are not listening to what he's saying or keeping notes. It's just that he makes them feel as if he's their guy. And this is what is going on with Trump. It's just they act on the most basic of instincts, which is, oh, I don't need to worry about anything because Nigel look after me.
I'm gonna push back just a tiny bit. Trump is doing the same game as Farage. Trump's polling is tanked. He lost 47 points in Texas.
I know, but Trump is now in power. Farage isn't.
But Farage's polling's down as well. It's dropped to the low 20s. It's because he keeps doing stuff like this. So I don't know if it's complete. There's always going to be a cult. There's like a percentage of people that will just go and follow you regardless. And history shows that. Like, once you become their leader, they will love you to the very end. Like, it's bizarre. But I think it's slowly eroding. Sorry, I'll just finish.
Yeah.
It's slowly eroding on Farage is my point.
He's got a plateau, and he always has. And really, actually, he's not doing any better than he did when he was running UKIP. All that's happening is the other parties have come down, and there's a multi-party situation going on. So yeah, that's played to his advantage. But we'll see what happens in the local elections, and particularly in the Senate elections. But he's in a damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, because he actually probably doesn't want to win power in the Welsh elections, because the moment he does, until the general election, he could be held to account for what goes on there. And people think that you can get into the Senate and do whatever you want. And of course you can't, because it's only really a sort of administrator of a budget in the Senate election who gets what. And the budget is pretty tight. So he's going to be, he's going to be facing a difficult time. So he's going to want to come a close second to Plaid Cymru, I would say. And then he's going to then blame Plaid Cymru if they win for things not being whoopity-doo-dah in Wales. But he's on a knife edge with that.
What do you think, Ollie?
Well, no, I agree with what Liz said. I don't know that he wants power. I think he's quite a strange character, really, to unpick, because he doesn't seem to have any particular ideology, probably beyond economic determinism. But then he sometimes rows back on that as well. Like, it is difficult to understand what he does want. Like, I don't think he's genuinely even anti-immigration, because I think he's smart enough to know that, like, leaving the Dublin Agreement, say, wouldn't have helped, and indeed hasn't helped on that front. So I don't know what he wants, to be completely honest. But it probably isn't power. So I'm agreeing with Liz.
Is it more like the dog chasing the car then?
Yeah, I guess maybe it's like attention. But I mean, you could argue, as many people have done so, that he is the most significant British politician, possibly certainly of the last decade. But it's because he's been able to do that without power, without accountability. He's retained his influence. I mean, he's been much more enduring than really anybody. I mean, who else is still around at top flight politics? Over 10 years on from the referendum, no one. He's a survivor. You see, and he's been, well, no, he doesn't count. He wasn't. He wasn't top flight. I don't think he's barely top flight now. But he's, and I think that's it's partly like a strength of his character, I think, that he's cultivated, but it's also a strength of his circumstances, like an outsider. And if he stops being an outsider, then he's got to play a different hand, which is what Liz was alluding to.
He's been pushing the Overton window and doing a lot of what, you know, I would say people like Murdoch want, which is more American, working with more like America and deregulating for that industry. So he definitely is a massive American fan, and he spent years over there working. He's definitely got an American obsession, I would say.
He's got a Trump obsession.
Trump obsession. Well,
he went to Mar-a-Lago this week and he didn't get another meeting with him. So he didn't get in the rotunda. It happened before and he got really antsy, and it just happened in Mar-a-Lago.
I want to ask Mr. Farage, you're here in the United States as an elected member of Parliament. Shouldn't you be in that Parliament?
You're right. I should work 8 days a week and never have a day off.
Nigel Farage, have you seen Donald Trump yet?
No, I haven't.
Are you going to?
Yes.
When's your audience with him?
I don't know yet.
But you're here to see him tonight?
I am.
And
which way are we going?
Did he ask you to come?
I'm here.
But did he ask you? Were you invited?
What's it got to do with you?
Should you not be with your constituents?
What's it got to do with you?
It's only a question.
There's an 8-day week. As long as I work 7 of them, we're okay.
Okay. And you're here because you're still a big Trump fan? You think Trump's politics are the way forward?
For peace, yes.
For peace? What do you mean?
I think peace comes through strength, not through weakness. And I think his 4 years were a good 4 years in terms of foreign policy. Far better than anything we've seen since with Joe Biden.
This week, he keeps turning up, like at the doorstep, being like, "Can I come in and hang out with you, Mr. President?"
But he's getting outflanked, isn't he, by Zach Polanski, who's sort of, coming up really far. He's come up so fast. And Zach is a fantastic communicator. I've got to give it to him. And he's moving that party a lot. As to how tenable that is, how durable it'll be, we'll see. But
it's funny because you mentioned the USA, but I think there's also fossil fuel companies. I mean, the irony of the whole thing with Iran and the petrol prices going up and oil prices going up is he cancelled the Kent Council Green initiative that they were going to do. So that was solar panels on roofs, wind turbines, and then environmentally cladding buildings in order to save on energy. Well, if he'd done that, you'd be then either generating income for Kent, or you'd be saving hopefully significant amounts of money when it came to the winter and extreme heat in the summer. And that's something I've found that the mainstream media just haven't touched on. He's backing this war, which has jacked up the oil prices, and at the same time, he's also making us not energy independent, or he doesn't want us to be energy independent. They seem to think that the North Sea oil will supply enough oil for the entire country. Is like the gambit they seem to be going on, and it's not far off. If you were to listen to their stuff, you would feel that the North Sea oil could provide for the whole of the UK in the way they're pitching it. It's the solution to all of our problems.
Their thing on the stupid net zero that they call it is bonkers, because they use it as a hook for electioneering, and they want people to be angry with net zero because there's this little charge on your energy bill for this to invest in renewables. But they never go on about the real greenwashing ripoff, which is Drax Power, which costs us about £1 billion a year in subsidies. And they get paid directly to wealthy landowners in North America, mostly North America, to cut down their trees and ship it over here because it's greenwashing. It looks green, but it isn't green. And he never mentions that. But then he goes on about solar panels. Oh, well, it's really bad for farmers because of solar panels. Well, it's absolute rubbish, because actually if you own your farm and you're able to plug in a solar farm to the grid, it gives you a secure income and it secures your farm. You can also still farm underneath those solar panels and around wind turbines. So it doesn't make, and also Spain is, really invested hugely in renewables, and they are really able to be strong and independent away from this fossil fuel monster, which it's a feudal thing. It's corporations controlling absolutely everything and then extorting all of your money from you. And that's exactly what it is. So Nige is there. He's there to con the poorest and most vulnerable to vote to help the richest in the world. That's what populism is.
We also have seen them starting to shift towards Christianity and anti-abortion stuff. And I'm 90% sure that the Christian groups from the United States are funneling money into the UK. Pro-abortion groups and so forth.
Yeah.
Anti-abortion groups. Have you been following that at all, or you're not following that?
Well, I see it on Twitter. It is funny because it's such a really present irony in it, which is that it's this kind of assertion that we're culturally Christian, which I think is an argument you could strongly make, but then they conflate that, which is just like, I'm culturally Christian in that I went to a C of E primary school, which put me off religion for life. But I know the hymns. I enjoy the hymns. The hymns are very fun. I'll very happily go to a carol service in the local church, which of course is of historical and local significance, this kind of stuff. But they seem to conflate that with genuinely being religious, and they want to sort of be able to posture it being genuinely religious while they just have this kind of like vague cultural affiliation with Christianity. But then that ties in with this like whole grind set thing, which is then about venerating Dubai. So you have this weird, I'm sure everyone's seen this, but there's this weird like anti-Muslim rhetoric, because it's not really pro-Christian, it's anti-Muslim, isn't it? At its heart, where they're saying we don't like immigrants that don't integrate, and Christianity and Islam are these two polar opposites, which of course they're not. But then they want to move to Dubai, which is obviously not a Christian country famously. It's just weird. It's really odd, but it's just nonsense. And I don't think anyone actually thinks that it's like a watertight intellectual position. It is just populism, as Liz just said.
I think there is something in it, in that Paul Marshall, who owns GB News, was also part of Legatum Institute, who is really largely behind these Tufton Street think tanks. And he now owns Unheard as well. He was in the Lib Dem party and
Sorry, what's Unheard? Just for our viewers.
It's a media platform. And so they have a video channel on YouTube, and they also have print media. I don't think it's actually printed, it's just digital media.
Yeah, but it's like you get Maurice Glasman and James Rebanks.
And part of that also is this ARC, this association of, what is it? Association of
Responsible Citizenship.
Responsible Citizenship. And oh my God, just go and Google that ARC and see who sits on the board. Maurice Glasman's on there, Jordan Peterson, Danny Kruger, who's a huge evangelical Christian who's anti-abortion. He's an MP near me down here, and now he's Reform. So there is a sense of I don't know, using this evangelical Christianity as a form of, when you mix that with the sort of tech control thing, it's just really creepy. That's what I think. But there is a kind of thing of wanting to sort of, I just feel like they want to get women back, chained to the kitchen sink, and sort of go back to this kind of 1950s reality after the war, when it was, wives you couldn't get divorced without a court case, and pre-abortion, and also it was illegal to be gay. That's it. Just feels incredibly regressive. But really, again, this push was evident in Russia under Vladimir Putin, who's been very much in sort of pushing this feeling of you've got to be a good citizen, and Christianity to a point. So it is ideology.
But the irony of all ironies is that Putin's clearly just going around whacking people and killing people, and that's his job.
Not very Christian.
Not very Christian. And Donald Trump is all over the Epstein files. And there's loads of documentaries. I couldn't believe I found that 1990 documentary that was making him out to be a predator when he's putting on these underage beauty pageants and getting the underage girls to attend parties.
And to a number of sources who saw Donald Trump at the parties. Most paint a similar picture.
Just describe to us the way Donald Trump behaved at these parties.
This guy it was like a predator in action.
Well,
going to the washroom, and I was going in, and a girl was coming out, and she kind of looked at me, and I go, "Have you talked to that Trump guy?" And she goes, "Yeah." As I was walking by, he's like trying to grab my ass.
We do know that he was having sex with them.
How do you know that?
Because the next day or days after, we would hear about it. He'd brag about it to his friends, and it would get around that he scored. You know, maybe 1 or 2 girls at a time, which is what he loved to do.
There's no evidence that Donald Trump slept with underage girls. But what's most shocking is the age of some of the models at the parties.
There was girls, I would say 14, 15 years old, from Europe, the European girls.
They were 14 or 15?
There were girls that were 14, 15 years old, for sure. I mean, I didn't run up and say, "How old are you?" But they looked younger than I was, and I was 17. You just knew because of what they were wearing and how they would hold themselves.
And these girls are all like, you know, anywhere from 14, 15, 16 years old. There was very few girls above the age of 19 there.
And you saw Donald Trump with these girls who were that young, 15, 16?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they're standing around with them, ogling them.
It was just disgusting. I felt like I was in the presence of a shark we're getting ready to roll his eyes back in his head and bite me. You know, that's how I felt. It was just like, get the hell out of here.
And that's their Christian model.
I've always called it Pharaohism. It's a 1% who want to be like gods, to do whatever they want and control the slave class and have everybody as a slave, and really maybe some courtiers in the middle, but mostly that's what they want. So really it has always been a war on the middle class, as well as a war on people that are they call useless eaters, which is why they're always going after disabled people and benefit claimants. Yep. But again, this did happen under Hitler, as you well know. So a lot of this comes back to, which is Oli and my favourite topic, Thomas Malthus, who was superseded by Darwinism. And actually, if you do the connections between these people to who's in charge now, going from the Aldous and Julian Huxley. Aldous Huxley was Huxley, Brave New World author, and then his brother Julian Huxley was a spy, very much central in the environmental movement. And so I think it is an ideology of a really elite pharaoh class that really have aspirations to control the world. And it really is something like out of a James Bond film. It's creepy and awful. Whereas most of us think within our own nationality. I don't think they do. I think they think globally and think that they are the masters of the universe, even with Elon Musk on board now, with rockets going into space and all the rest of it.
Well, it's funny that you bring up pharaohs, because didn't they used to intermarry into their families, which caused their downfall?
Right.
Which, and you know, I'm not to be too sort of suggestive of it, but if you ever listen to the stuff he says about his daughter in front of his daughter on camera, Donald Trump, it's creepy as fuck.
She's got Marla's legs. We don't know whether or not she's got this part yet, but time will tell. Tell you, one of the most beautiful women in the world, according to every magazine, but I have to say it's true, and I helped.
Let me guess. Angelina Jolie. No?
Not at all.
Go ahead.
No.
She's not beautiful?
You know who's one of the great beauties of the world, according to everybody, and I helped create her?
Who?
Ivanka. My daughter, Ivanka.
Yeah.
She's 6 feet tall. She's got the best body.
Yeah, she's hot.
She made a lot of money as a model, a tremendous amount.
So, Donald, all right, I'm afraid to ask this question, but what would you do? Playboy put Ivanka on the cover of the magazine, and she had not.
This is going to be an interesting answer.
He doesn't even want you to have a drink. I know him. So.
It would be really disappointing. Not really, but it would depend on what was inside the magazine.
If she posed, it would be fine. But if they put her picture on...
Yeah, but it depends on what goes inside the magazine.
Well, see, that's her gripe. That's this girl's gripe.
And
people assume there'll be nude photos.
Right, you do assume that with Playboy.
Okay,
but if there weren't, you wouldn't have an issue with it then. If they were using her to...
I don't think Ivanka would do that inside the magazine, although she does have a very nice figure. I've said that if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. You know.
Okay, Ivanka, what's the favorite thing you have in common with your father?
Either real estate or golf.
Donald, with your daughter?
Well, I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that.
And then there's loads of pictures. I mean, you could probably interpret it either way, but the pictures on top of the comments of him and his daughter, it's just like, what the fuck? And of course, you know, again, all over it goes back to the Epstein files again, doesn't it? All the creepy shit that we've heard from him and everyone else. And it even ties back to what we were originally talking about. You know, there's plenty of people on the left on social media calling this Operation Epstein Fury. And that the whole, I think there was a poll, 52% of Americans felt this was a deliberate distraction from the Epstein files. Fucking hell. That is, I mean, that's up there with JFK. That's the same sort of numbers. You know, we're getting into that conspiracy theory territory where I think the polls showed that 50 to 65% of Americans thought that JFK was taken out in some sort of form of...
Do they think that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Why? I've heard that people do think that. But I've never understood why that would have happened.
Well, it does get worse because, you know, they had two commissions. So the first one was the Warren Commission, right? And it said there were only 3 bullets fired. They then had a follow-up commission that called it a conspiracy because they came to the conclusion that more than one person was involved, and that is the definition of a conspiracy. So the second commission, whose name I forget. Yeah, so it is a conspiracy, but then, you know, as soon as that is labeled, then you begin to unravel that, and the population begins to mistrust government because
we do exist in a very fun time at the minute, I think, where you can say things that are just really out of pocket because essentially the Epstein files. I mean, it goes back to QAnon, right? The whole like Hillary Clinton eats babies in the pizza restaurant thing, and then. I mean, obviously, those details aren't necessarily correct, but the fundamental story there that there is an elite paedophile ring, and the word pizza comes up as well. Like pizza seems to be a euphemism for underage sex in the files.
I'm going to have to be careful there because I would say that it's a code, and we don't know what the code is.
Oh well, okay. Well, I've made an assumption there, you know, allegedly. But the fundamental story there actually was true, which is so wild. I mean, if you think back 10 years ago when all of that Pizzagate stuff was going on, like everyone was just looking at the QAnon people going, "Oh, these guys are off their rocker. What the hell?" And then they were basically right, you know. But this is why I mean, I feel very comfortable talking about Malthusian theory at the minute because, you know, like I have known for a long time that you have people in elite circles that do really unhinged stuff in history. I mean, what becomes the Soil Association, just to kind of link it back to what we were talking to, tried to overthrow the government in 1933, doesn't work, so they invent the concept of organic agriculture to kill half of the population. They deliver Franco to Spain. They're a really important group of people. And this does tie into the kind of globalist elite. I think that it kind of scales up over time as everything does. I mean, you go back to the Dark Ages, you have all of the Saxon kingdoms, and then you get 4 Saxon kingdoms, and then you get England, and then you get the UK, and then you get Europe or whatever. But like in the sort of Second World War era, you have the different fascisms. You have German fascism, Italian fascism, the organic movement think that they're British fascism, and then now I think we are looking at a kind of like global order, or maybe 3 in the kind of Orwellian sense, which I think I've said on this podcast before, which is where you have we're maybe Airstrip 1. I don't know. That was a bit of a ramble, but I do think that the conspiracy theory stuff is really interesting because you could just make bold statements now and people don't go, well, that sounds implausible, because I think people now are sort of like, well, you know, if it's not been disproved, maybe there's something in it. It's a different world.
So one of the things I always cite with what you were saying with the Epstein stuff and the coded language was beef jerky. There is a comment made by Epstein saying, get the beef jerky out the freezer. Now, you're a MILF. Yeah, look at your reaction there. Who puts beef jerky in a freezer? Like, there's literally, this doesn't make any sense. So you're clearly talking about something. And then you mentioned pizza and grape soda. He keeps referring to it in the really odd, abstract context of it being delivered to his house. So you're going, but I mean, So you can go, okay, maybe it's trafficking, but I could also go, maybe it's drugs. Maybe it's a form of drug that he's talking about.
Oh yeah, it could just be. It could be drugs. We don't know. We don't. We can't know. We can't know.
Well, I mean, you say that. The FBI this week have announced that in 2023, Epstein files got hacked by a foreign entity, and they think it's likely a foreign government. That got released this week. So, but the question is then, what did they take out of the Epstein files, and what have they got? And we know it's bad because there were. I mean, did you catch the video footage that got released this week? Or I think CNN said they found in the Epstein files.
I don't think I have.
It's loads of videos of young girls that weren't redacted. You could see.
I saw some of those from a little while ago now. I have been following it broadly, not the sort of past week, but it's just wild. But I find the political stuff most interesting. The fact that you've got Barry Josephson asking how to get rid of poor people as a whole. See, I knew it. I knew it was there. You know, it is the fundamental question of the organic movement and most of the nature-friendly farming stuff. It's about population control, as is actually contraception originally. I have a video about this on my channel, talking about Malthus with someone who is an academic that studies contraception. But like these things that are often seen as progressive are not, and it really does come out in the Epstein files that the elites are looking at the world and thinking, how do we get rid of all of the pores?
I mean, it doesn't. None of that makes sense. Like, you know, on so many different levels, like ethically, morally. You know, a lot of them talk about being Christian. Don't think Jesus was going around killing all the sick people and the poor people. And yet,
I don't know. I think
a lot of them use that as a gambit, and it doesn't make sense. But then you've got people like Stephen Hawking. Are you telling me that under their ideology, which makes no sense, they're advocating this?
That
they would
picture of
eliminate...
Stephen Hawking with the girls has just come up into my head. Oh dear.
Has that happened in the Epstein files? Has he actually?
Yeah, have you not seen that?
There's a picture of it, yeah, but it's. I feel like
just to clarify, there's also an email from Epstein saying that he didn't do anything and it was all a load of bollocks. So, but you know, just because Epstein said, why would you take Epstein's word on anything?
Exactly.
It's just full of shit.
It's just a really inappropriate picture of him with these girls. It's just.
Shit,
I mean, as a woman, I can tell you, it's really It's just the way they're dressed, and you know, it's just inappropriate.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, as a woman, I wouldn't want to be filmed, have a photograph of me with two young girls dressed like that next to me, and you're sat in a wheelchair. But I think even if I was a man, I just don't think it's right to have women paraded, you know, as you know, I don't know, accessories to sort of dress around people, whether they're actually getting involved with them sexually or not. The whole thing is, if I walked into a party and there were girls going around dressed like that, you know, I would just walk out. I would feel incredibly uncomfortable.
Well, that's what they were saying in the 1990s BBC documentary on Trump's beauty pageants. That's how they were dressed. It was inappropriate, and the girls there could see it was inappropriate. And then they were being demanded post-pageant to come and attend Trump's after parties. So you're going, you know, sounds really similar to what Epstein was doing.
It's just about power, though, but that's why the academics are there. Like, most academics are just kind of lonely nerds, which, I mean, I said that in a charged way, but I mean, like, I've spent time within a university, and like, being an academic is a very lonely existence, because you hyper focus on something that you can only talk about in any amount of detail with like 3 other people who all exist at other universities, and then you have to talk about it to loads of disinterested, is that the right word? Uninterested students. I think that's correct. And that's just, you know, a very lonely thing to do. You spend lots of time in a little office, probably away from your family, and then to be invited by loads of wealthy, cool people in, you know, other areas of the world, in media, in music, in politics, whatever else, to go and have a party on an island very cool, you see, and they're sort of charmed by that, I feel, and that's why they go, but there's nothing new under the sun. It's just about power. I mean, you've had equivalent ththings just throughout history. I think it is bad, and it's against the kind of rules-based order, and it is repulsive, and they shouldn't do it this, like the other. But it's quite easy on a human level to understand why people like Stephen Hawking have gone to that stuff. And I mean, Steven Pinker's account of going to the island, I think, is really telling, because he sees it as nonsense and then gets voted off. Like, it's this kind of like cultural conformity. Novara Media did a really good piece on it, but Steven Pinker went to a gathering. I don't know if it was on the island or on just like a townhouse somewhere, but essentially they were discussing Malthusian theory, and they were discussing like how to get rid of the poor, this, like the other. Sorry. No, very explicitly, Epstein said that if you alleviate the condition of the poor, they breed and you get more of them, and this therefore doesn't work. And Steven Pinker said, no, that isn't how it works. We know that if you get higher rates of infant mortality, people will have more children. So the opposite is true. And then he got voted off the island, according to one of his colleagues. But like, it shows that like
Einstein came from a relatively poor background. His parents weren't genius academics. One was a teacher, and I can't remember what the other was. So this whole thing of like the point I'm trying to make is, if you want someone with a high IQ, their thinking is you eliminate poor people because they don't have a high IQ, or they're a drain on the society. And what they're actually
there is actually eugenic element of it.
What they're actually advocating for is what I've termed or coined as capitalist selection. So their whole thing in their head is that your worth is only as good as you play capitalism, and therefore that's the judgment as to whether or not you're kept alive, which is fucking insane, because you can't control capital. I can't like, you saw this in World War One, where the American government decided to expand farms, right, to provide in America, to provide food for Europe, and it almost, I think it doubled or nearly doubled food production in America. That reduced price. As soon as Europe came back online for being able to do farm production, the government took a laissez-faire position and basically went, oh, it's up to you, try and reduce the amount you're producing, but it doesn't matter. And that then caused, or was part of the reason for, the massive depression they had in the States, because governments said interfere, or they decided to interfere, and then they changed their mind and went, no, don't interfere. And so I'm looking at that and going, how is someone as an independent farmer running a small farm meant to be able to navigate through all of that, or be, accountable for someone else's decisions that have made them poor? And then within their thinking, they're going, well, that's your fault, you're poor. You didn't adapt to the situation. Therefore, we're deciding that you shouldn't exist. Like, there's no fucking logic in anything that they say.
Yeah, but there's nothing new under the sun. It's just Malthusian theory. You had exactly the same thing over 100 years ago. I mean, there's a chap called Anthony Ludovici, and it's all the same themes, right? So he's defending the aristocracy, and his movement becomes the organic movement, and there's other characters as well. Anthony Ludovici, name suggests, diverse heritage, not English. Another chap, William Sanderson, who's a cripple, so he's not this kind of like blood and soil picture of health that they would like to see of the elites. Most of the other people are aristocrats that are inbred on some level, but they argue that because the aristocracy have more money than everyone else, which of course is hereditary on some level, that they are better, and they believe in this. It's similar to the capitalists today, like in a meritocracy, even though that isn't really how the world works. They think, well, we have more money, therefore we're better than everyone else, and therefore the other people are a problem, and then they need to be controlled on some level because they're over exploiting resources. And it's not like what you see in the Epstein files is not new. It goes back to Malthus, and there's loads of iterations of it. You have Malthusian theory, then you have social Darwinism and eugenics and contraception, all of those things. Then you have the organic movement. Then you have the population bomb by Paul Ehrlich, and you have the Green Party one, what's it called? The Blueprint for Survival, the People Party, which becomes the Green Party. I wouldn't say under Zach Polanski. I think he's changed direction a little bit. And then it comes through to today with loads of stupid movements like agroecology and this, that, the other. Like it is horrible, but it's not new. And if you know to look for it, it just builds on a precedent. Like it is irrational, but it's a really well carved trench that's existed for a very, very long time.
Maurice Glassman and Nigel Farage, and I have referred to this before on this show, when they were drinking pints in GB News when hardly anyone watched it, they celebrate this notion of kings.
Welcome to Talking Pints. The King. The King, absolutely. Now,
and really what that is it's a notion of oligarchy, and really the tropes that let's call them the 1%, or it's difficult because so many words are used, elite or whatever, the people that want to have power that only works for them, and they use everything else, other excuses, othering and all the rest of it, to justify having control of the reins to make the world work for them. And we are in such an interrupted time because of AI and robots coming as well. So we're more at risk than ever, because now, before they would sort of say, well, we've got to look after the workers because we need them to do all of the jobs that we need to be done. Now they're sort of excited at, let's build data centers and have more power centers so we can have robots to do everything, and they don't need holiday, they don't need feeding, they don't need lunch breaks, and yes, hospitals, and when they're defunct, put them in the bin, and hopefully they can repair each other and all the rest of it. And that is really where I think that's where we are, and it is a very frightening reality, in that the wrong people are in power to make the right decisions as this new technology comes through, where we have another being, like an alien almost, an alien being to humans, that could be a lot smarter and a lot stronger and a much more capable than us. And we've got people in power sort of like, yeah, we'll let them come through and do what they want because might is right. And they're going to then hand might to the robots, who might turn around and say, well, you guys, you're all useless eaters, we can do this on our own. Off you go. That is where we are.
It's one of those weird things as well. If we get this robot workforce, and it's looking more and more likely now, what is the new economy going to look like? Because it isn't going to be capitalism. It can't. And then who owns those? Does the government own those robots and then put them to work, or is it private industry? And would you want private industry having robots like that? I mean, it's pretty fucked. Like, you've got an army, you can literally code them in any way you want. There's no legislation in place on how to code these things and the ethics models that you need to put in place. And of course, with the other problem with AI, and we're seeing it in ChatGPT-5, is it's coding itself now. And in order to be able to check it, for ChatGPT at least, they're having to use ChatGPT-4 to keep an eye on ChatGPT-5. So you're going, we are now at a point where we don't even know what the fuck it's saying about itself and how it's programming itself. Like, it's beyond our coding capabilities by the looks of things. And so, these are fundamental questions, and yet Restore and Reform, well, Restore seem to want us to go and hide in the church, and Reform seem to want to get us to hide in the pub. That's their big fucking plan for this big problem that's coming. And no one's talking about this. But it's going to fundamentally change capitalism, because I can't see how else it's going to operate. And as you said, Liz, go on.
I don't think it will change capitalism in a way that we haven't seen before. I mean, it is kind of scary to look at AI, but we have had labor displacing technology before. Generally, it's not had the catastrophic effect that people have viewed it to have. Like, it is. I think conceivable that the jobs created by the displacement of labor in AI, like with just automation. I mean, like, supermarket checkout people, this and that, right? It creates jobs in like designing machines and installing machines, this, that, the other, right? And you wouldn't necessarily expect everyone who works on a supermarket checkout to be able to retrain into that type of role. Maybe you end up with a kind of useless mouths situation that becomes so problematic if you have a ruling class with a Malthusian bent. But I don't think it's fair to say that it's inevitable that we're going to just displace like the entire human population with AI and robots. Like, it's something that people have been scared of throughout history, and it's never happened.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're going to need a new model for whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I did. Yeah. No. I did. I meant to address that. But like, we were already in like a kind of oligarchy. I mean, like Amazon it's like appears like a market if you go on the website, but isn't one, and it will just be an extension of that. I mean, we're already sort of in post-capitalism now, because capitalism, you have competition, but then inevitably you get monopoly after that because competition bumps itself out. I mean, Liz said earlier, right? Is 5 companies dominating the entire global clothing market capitalism? No, there isn't any meaningful competition there. They can tacitly collude without even tacitly colluding, right? They just all have to do the same thing. There's only 5 of them, right? And look, is that capitalism? Not really. And yeah, it will get worse, I'm sure, but I don't see that we're going to, see a radical shift into a kind of like more feudalist model, because really I think we're already going there. I think the curve is well underway.
I'm not saying a feudalist model, but what I am saying is, look at it this way. You've got the ability to install the AI, a self-learning, self-coding model into a robot that can move quicker, move faster, work longer, with the only limitation at the present moment of my knowledge is battery power and battery length and battery longevity. That's what I meant. Battery longevity. So how long can that battery hold its charge for? If you've got that and they can self-repair, which is what Liz alluded to, that is a workforce that can self-replicate and is unlimited and has unlimited potential because it can self-code. And we've already seen, like, you've seen the ones in China where they fight. They kick down doors and do flying kicks and flips.
Have you seen the film 9 from a long time ago? It's about like a little sock puppet thing. It's a post-apocalyptic film about a little robot made out of a rag. He's not a robot. He's like a little. He's got a part of a human soul in him. Is the point? He's like and he fights these robots that are self-creating. But then I think they lose or whatever. But that's kind of where I feel that that's what you're sort of describing, which is that you get.
So the moral of the story is we lose,
completely autonomous from people and just keep. It seems like maybe it will happen. I don't know, but it's kind. We're not there just yet. I don't think.
It's going, but it's accelerating to such a degree. And so, I mean, when you think ChatGPT and all that only really came in 3 years ago, was that when it was first launched?
Yeah, it was 3 years
and
ago.
And how much it's changing already. And yeah, we're seeing these robots, I mean, which are incredible. And things are getting, the acceleration is compounding. And so and because there really is, it's kind of like when cars were first invented and there was no legislation to deal with cars or roads or anything, and so there were loads of people died because of cars being invented, because they were careering around, in dangerous manner. And we're kind of like that with this technology, but obviously the propensity of it is so far greater, and we've got the worst people in power who believe in, just let it all happen and it'll all evolve and might is right. So it couldn't be worse. We need a world leaders to be sort of responsible and actually thinking about what happens if, what happens what, how do we control this? And they're more interested in controlling citizens with, digital passports and thinking that we're the danger. So, I don't know. I see it as a very scary time, and it's happened a lot quicker than I ever imagined possible. We always used to watch Tomorrow's World when I was younger. They didn't have that anymore, but it was so exciting to have the Magimix come out that could chop your vegetables. That was seen as, or a washing machine. Really, the modern washing machines came through in my lifetime. It is so, and all of these things used to be like, in 15 years time we might have this tumble dryer, a video recorder. I mean, I used to be fantasize about being able to record Batman, my favorite program when I was growing up, because I was a tomboy.
Good choice.
And and Scooby-Doo. And we always used to go to my grandparents on a Saturday, and Batman was on. I used to cry, go, oh, I'm gonna miss Batman again. And like, if only I could record it. And suddenly one day we could record it, and it was like, wow, this is. And I was about 15 when we had our first video recorder. Now look where we are. You can't. It keeps getting faster and faster and faster. And so the thought that we have, and it wasn't that long ago, we had that program Robot Wars, and people were inventing little robots as a television program to fight each other. Now look where we are. We've got these robots potentially coming in who'll do your washing, your cooking, your ironing, run warehouses, blah blah blah. But I thought about it. I quite like the thought of having a robot. I can say good morning, whatever I call her, or can you do this? But then I thought, what if she gets bad-tempered and goes into the knife drawer and decides to murder me? That's where I am with robots, because they will be evolving all of the time. And the AI means that they will we don't know what will happen as they pick up more and more feelings from humans and where that will go. We are in iRobot, aren't we? That's really essentially it. Close to.
I think there were two things that came out from the Ukraine war. There was a robot that held a position for 45 days against the Russians. And I think they had to resupply it with ammunition every 3 days, but 45 days? That's crazy. And then the US did some modeling where they put human pilots against AI pilots. Want to guess what the success rate was I think, Liz, you've heard this one, so just to Ollie. Do you want to guess what the success rate was of the human pilots versus the AI pilots?
Well, an order of magnitude worse, I imagine. What does that mean? None.
They lost 100%. They lost.
Yeah,
in the simulation.
Right. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, chess robots have been better than people for years and years now, haven't they? So
yeah, and Sudoku.
It was always coming. It was always coming.
On that cheerful note.
On that note.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Tune in next week for another exciting story from the files of Police Squad.